Hi students, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 4th of August 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. So the first article says Center pushes for quota in promotion for SC/STs. So what exactly is the context here? So it says citing 1,000 years of deprivation suffered by the Dalit communities, the government on Friday began its push for providing accelerated promotion with consequential seniority for members of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in public employment. So what exactly is that we will have to understand here? There was one of the judgments that was passed in the year 2006, and that is the most important judgment, and that is Nagaraj judgment. So what exactly does the Nagaraj judgment say? So in case a particular person has to be provided promotion in the government service, what needs to be done is he has to be a person who is not having a representation from its Dalit community. So what the government should ideally say is that in case the efficiency of the government domain does not have a problem, or if that particular person, if he is represented, then there will be no efficiency problem in the government, and at the same time his community within the Dalits are in case not represented, only then he would be able to provide the promotion in the government. So what this particular judgment clearly goes on to say is that only after you provide a particular quantifiable data that this community is not represented in the government is the first one, and then what you need to understand is if the efficiency is not going to be a problem, and only after providing all the statistics, data and facts with respect to all these representations, only when you will be able to provide the promotion, is what the Nagaraj case actually said. So first prove that this particular Dalit community that you're wanting to promote, that they are backward, then make sure that there is no adequate representation. In case there is already an adequate representation of that particular community, then there will be no promotion. But if there is no representation that is there in the government domain, only then that will be provided. And at the same time you will have to provide a statistics. In case there is no statistics, then we would not be able to provide promotion, is what the 2006 judgment has done. But what the center is currently doing is, but over a period of time, what center has said is all these people from ages and ages, there was a particular Varna system, and these people, especially those people from the SC/ST community, have suffered a lot because of the Varna system, and because they do not have the basic amenities that is required for them to prosper in their life. That is why we need to provide them this promotion, because only when there is promotion that it is provided to these people, all those people in the SC/ST community will feel that there is someone from our particular community who is represented, so in case we have any difficulty, he will take care of us. So that is an assurance that is being given by the government. So what exactly needs to be understood is this is an affirmative action that the government is planning to take up. Why? The simple reason is all these people were actually made sure that they were actually restricted to a particular domain. They were actually doing all abysmal work, and because they were doing all abysmal work, the growth was actually inhibited, and because there were a lot of impediments in their life, they were not able to prosper in their life. And that is why we are going to provide them this particular promotion in the SC/ST domain in the government services. Even if you see off late, right, there have been number of instances when you take, for example, number of states like the Uttar Pradesh, or for example in Bihar, what exactly is happening is people cannot even ride the horses, and then people are not even able to live that handlebar mustache. People are fighting in the name of caste and system. So this is completely not acceptable in the modern era, and that is why the center says we will sustain with this particular model, that is we will be coming up with promotion. So this particular case in Supreme Court right now, so it is under the constitutional bench, so we will be discussing in detail once again, but as of now only know this much, that is with respect to Nagaraj's judgment, and next is with respect to what the government is doing. But in case of the future judgments and observations, we will be discussing this once again. This is all we will have to know with respect to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says HAL Tests Rotary Drone Code developed with IITK. So what exactly is it? So here we are speaking about the RUAV, or the Rotary Wing Unmanned Air Vehicle. So what exactly is it? It is a 2.5 kg payload or an instrument including a live streaming video camera. So all these things are factual information. Kindly remember the facts that is important from the prelims perspective. So it can operate for an hour, and it can travel up to 8 8 to 10 kilometers. It was powered by a 2-stroke petrol engine. The RUAV is the first outcome of the HAL's R&D tie-ups with many academic institutions such as the IITs of the Madras, the Roorkee, the Kharagpur, the Bombay, Kanpur, and the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. So apart from military and civil helicopters, the center is designing and developing rotary UAVs for defense, paramilitary forces, and homeland security. So kindly make sure that you know all these factual data that is important, because this can be a potential question in the defense segment. So this is all we will have to understand. So kindly remember these key facts. Okay, so moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says HRD Ministry approves norms against plagiarism. This is an informational article that is to do with plagiarism. So what does this particular article says? That in case there is a research student or a teacher who is actually associating in terms of the research and development, what will exactly happen is, in case there is submission of a thesis or a particular project and this has a plagiarism, that is a particular student has copied this work from somewhere else, then it means such student will have the problems. And at the same time, in case the student who is supporting this student or the teacher herself or the professor herself has actually submitted some of the papers which has plagiarized content, that means she's copied this particular segment or this particular wording from some other book or for example article or a magazine, then these people will be investigated or suitable actions will be taken. So let's try and see what exactly is the factual data or something to do with this particular penalty process. So it says plagiarism up to 10% would not invite any penalty. So as long as it is within the domain of 10%, that is, you can actually plagiarize up to 10%, but if it is something more than that, then only there will be penalty. So as long as it is within the 10%, there will be no penalty and you can go ahead with this particular part. And then it says students may have to submit a revised research paper if found plagiarized in between 10 to 40%. So the duration of resubmission will be by 6 months. So in case the content that is drawn from some other sources, that is magazine, book or anywhere else, you are producing this particular process, then if it is between 10 to 40%, then the resubmission has to happen. So in case there is discovery of plagiarism between 10% to 40%, we will have to submit a new form or a new thesis, and that is within 6 months. If the plagiarized content is between 40 to 6%, then those students will be deprived of submitting the revised paper for the duration of 1 year. So if the content is between 40 to 60%, then you won't be able to reproduce or resubmit the same thing until a particular duration of that year is done. So they'll be able to reproduce it only after the 1 year, and that is a new content has to be prepared. And then the students registration for a program will be cancelled if plagiarized beyond 60%. If it is more than 60%, then what it ideally means is the student's registration will be cancelled. He will not be able to submit his thesis anymore after this. And at the same time, there are also teachers who are involved in the academics. If found having research papers plagiarized in between 10 to 40% for the teachers, they'll be asked to withdraw that particular manuscript. If found in between 40 to 60%, they'll be debarred to supervise masters or PhD or MPhil students for 2 years, and they'll be denied to single annual increment. So in case it is between 40 to 60%, then they'll not be able to evaluate their students who are actually pursuing PhD as well as the MPhil for next 2 years. And even in terms of the salaries, the increment will not happen for that annual duration. And it further goes on to say, if it is 60% of the plagiarism, this will actually lead to teacher suspension and even dismissal. So what exactly is the broad objective of this particular process? So one of the things that we need to realize is why exactly this plagiarism clause is too much is what exactly happens. Students are not learning, they are just copy pasting the content. They'll not have any idea as to how things have to be worked out, because they do not have the broader creativity. They'll not be able to sustain their lives in this competitive world. So one of the basic objective of this particular regulation is to promote academic research as well as curb plagiarism by actually developing major systems to actually detect this particular process. So what would be the major implications? So one of the major implications is, in case a student or a teacher actually goes about with this plagiarism, what will happen is the student and the teacher both will lose their jobs. So this is all we will have to understand with respect to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says Matala Project with India is on. So what we will have to understand first is with respect to the location. So where exactly is this Matala It is on the southeast region of Sri Lanka. So kindly remember where exactly these are. One is Hambantota Port, the other one is the Matala International Airport. So what we need to understand is this Matala Airport, right? It is located on the southeast region of Sri Lanka, and it is one of those areas which is remotely occupied in Sri Lanka, and Matala Airport has actually struggled to attract any passengers or in fact the airlines themselves. So because it is developed in this underdeveloped area, and because it is located in a remote corner, airplanes are not coming, passengers are not coming. So this also has this particular dubbed as world's emptiest international airport. And what is the concern here? Okay, it is with Sri Lanka. Why is India worried is the next question that usually pops up. So why India is actually worried, or why India actually wants to pick up this particular Matala project, is simply because we know that there is this particular Hambantota port. So Hambantota port has been leased, right? And what exactly happens? We know that Sri Lanka is somewhere close to India, and what exactly happens? There is presence of Navy force that can actually make sure that India is disturbed. That is, because Hambantota port is actually taken over by the Chinese, what can actually happen is this can be one of the string of pearls theory. That is, this can be a security threat to India, and because can be a security threat to India, what exactly is happening is India would take up this particular airport. Now because there is presence of the Chinese in the Hambantota port, India will pick up the Matala International Airport to actually limit the influence of this particular nation. So in order to curb the influence of China in the regional hub of India, and because Sri Lanka is close to India, and because Sri Lanka is one of the closest neighbors to India, and it has also got the cultural importance, that is, we have our own Tamil population and it has always been close to us. So what can exactly happen in this particular case is China can actually mend things, and it can actually put in a puppet government, and because it is putting a puppet government, it will be more closer to China in order to make sure that this influence of China is curbed. And in order to limit China's influence, what is happening is India is planning to take up this Matala airport, but this is still in the negotiation terms. So what exactly is the other terms? So what would happen in the future is, let's say for example, we know the resources power of China. China always believes in the debt trap diplomacy. So because they have a lot of loans that they are giving to Sri Lanka, currently what Sri Lanka says is that we are not going to be any naval force. That is, Sri Lanka is not actually providing that naval support to this particular country of China. But what can happen in the future is that currently what is there is no naval support, but in future China's influence is so much that it can actually give a lot of loans. It can influence the outcome of the local politics. So what can also happen is there would be one day where the government of Sri Lanka will have to listen to China, and it has to provide the naval associations. So in order to curb this particular process, that is why India is also planning to take up this Matala International Airport. Another important point that we will have to understand is, now let's say for example Sri Lanka is actually provided Hambantota port access to Chinese. So what would happen is, we know for the fact that the northern part of Sri Lanka is where the majority of the Tamils are also located. So let's say for example in the future there are certain infrastructural projects. So in case there are certain infrastructural projects that are supposed to be developed in the northern part of Sri Lanka, so what would happen is, we also know for the fact that Chinese people don't actually support the local employment. So instead what they actually do is they get their own people. So because they are actually getting their own people, what would happen is the employment opportunities of the northern territory people of the Sri Lanka would be under loss. So because the Chinese are getting their own people, the native people will not find the jobs, and because there will be no jobs for the local people, this will have the repellion effect in India. And because we have the close association with Sri Lanka, and because we have a close cultural link with Sri Lanka in terms of the Tamil population, this can have the spiral effect, and number of people can actually start moving towards India. And because they start moving with India, we may have a kind of a refugee crisis. So in order to make sure all this is curbed at the nib, that is why we have taken this particular negotiation. So India is in talks with Matala airport, and that is with the Sri Lankan government, to actually take over this Matala airport in order to make sure that the influence and the limit of the Chinese infiltration, or for that matter the Chinese influence in this particular area, is actually curbed. That's the important point, but this is still on the negotiation mode. Once we have a clear-cut analysis as to what exactly the agenda is going to be, we will have the discussion once again. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article speaks about service sector grows fastest since October 2016, the PMI survey. So one of the things that we need to understand in this particular case is what exactly is the purchasing managers index. So what we need to understand is this purchaser managers index, that is PMI stands for the purchaser manager index, is basically one of the indicators which will actually help in understanding how exactly is the business activity. So is the business growing or is the business declining? Has it taken some important steps or is it not taken the important steps? So basically what it will help us understand is the business activity with respect to the manufacturing as well as the service sector. So the primary sector is not considered in this particular index, but it is only the manufacturing as well as the service sector. So what exactly is the context? So when you look into the context, right, that is the Nikkei India Composite Output Index, what it has actually done is it has actually rose from 53.3 in June to 54.1 in July. So there is the growth that we can see, right, that 53.3 to 54.1. So what do we understand from this is that the business activity is actually increased. So let's try and understand what it actually means. Let's say for example there is a particular benchmark and this benchmark is at 50. So this benchmark, so in case there is a growth that is less than 50, what it means is there is business decline that is happening. But in case that is more than 50, it means there is business growth that is happening. So what will basically happen is, let's say for example in this particular case, the PMI, what it is done is every month the PMI is actually declared. That is the purchasing managers index is actually declared every month. So what will this actually do is it will give us the business trends that is happening across the private sector. So it considers the different businesses that have been set up in India. So it will give what exactly is the trend, and based on all the data that is collected from around 800 companies. So what this will do is it has certain statistics. It will collect the data from number of representatives from the private domain. So it will see if there are actually jobs that are generated, if there are new orders that are actually built, has the improvement in the employment ratio increased, have there been new inventories, has there been improvement in the prices. All these things will be checked. So they have certain representatives, and these representatives will collect the information from around 800 companies, and this improvement has to be seen in terms of the sales, or in terms of the orders, or in terms of the employment, or in terms of the price level. So in case there is an increase in all these things, then it means that there is an improvement with respect to the business activity. So what currently is happening is this 53.3, there was this PMI index of 53.3 in June, and now we have the 54.1 in July. So what it means is the business activity in terms of the manufacturing, in terms of the service sector, is improving. Had it been less than 50, then it means the business activity is declining, but now it is more than 50. And also what needs to be done is, this happens every month, right? So in June it was 53 and in July it is 54. So it means there is a boost in the business activity. So what we need to understand is there is a benchmark of 50, and if it is less than 50, it means the business activity is declining, and if it is more than 50, it means the business activity is increasing, and the trend shows that all the businesses are making profits. So what we need to understand is this will basically give us an idea of how exactly the business conduction happening in India. So what are the implications? So what we need to understand is, because this is actually released at the start of every month, right, much before all other indexes, let's say for example there are number of indexes that are released. So what this will give us an idea is, it will give us an idea of the economic activity that is happening in the society. First thing is, because it is given much before, now it is August, so it has given me an idea about July. So next month it will be September, so it will give me an idea of what is the business activity in August. So because it is released at the start of every month, it will give us an idea of what is the economical activity activity that is happening in the society. And at the same time, what we will be able to understand is this will be giving us the industrial output. So what is the industrial output that is expected? So is it going in a positive direction or is it giving in a negative direction? All the advantages. So is there growth, is there decline? So it will help us know what exactly is the industrial output. On one side, it will give us the idea about the trend of the economy. It will give us the idea of how exactly the industrial output is, and what we will also have to understand is, making use of all these things, what the RBI will also do is it will take its decisions on the interest rates. Because it takes its decisions on the interest rates, RBI is also, I mean, this tool is also helpful for the RBI. And the most important thing that will understand is, now let's say for example we know how the market works, that is the capital market works. So in case any company or any person has to actually invest in particular FII or FDI, what it will actually do is how exactly the economy as a whole is working. Let's say for example the PMI is actually increasing every month after month. So what this will give us, it will give an idea of how exactly the bond markets would also fluctuate. So in case it is increasing, that means the economy is stable, it is also increasing, it is giving the boost to the economy, the trends in the economy is good. So what will happen is the FII, that is the capital market, bond markets will also increase. So what this will attract is this FDI and FII in this economy, and what it will also signify is that the economy is also competing. So all these things will actually signify that we are having a growth factor in the economy in terms of the manufacturing as well as in terms of the service industry. So this is all we will have to know with respect to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says TRAI calls for zero telecom equipment imports by 2022. So what exactly is the issue here? So currently what we are seeing is an important point, that is there is less number of exports that are happening, and at the same time there is more imports that are happening with respect to the telecom sector. In order to make sure that we actually manage the exports and the imports equally, what the TRAI has suggested is that we need to come up with our own research and development in order to curb the imports that are currently happening. So what it says is the import of telecom instruments are far greater than the export. So what does the statistics say? It says that as per available data, the export of telecom instruments stood at $1,201.7 million in 2017-18, while the imports totaled at about $21,847.92 million. So because the imports are comparatively more than the exports, what we need to do is we need to change this whole paradigm. So the TRAI has actually recommended the Indian telecom equipment manufacturing sector to take a transition from import dependent sector to a global hub of indigenous manufacturing. So it has said TRAI has asked Telecom Equipment Manufacturing Council to identify and recommend specific areas of priority. So what this particular council will actually do is find out where exactly the problem areas are, and after finding out what exactly the problem areas, invest the money in this problem area and make sure this area is rejuvenated. So what we need to do is first identify where exactly we are going wrong. The minute we identify where exactly we are going wrong, we need to invest money into this particular domain such that it happens within India. So we are indigenously developing rather than importing certain things from outside the country. So what it has further suggested is the progress of the indigenous telecommunication equipment manufacturing is to be monitored by the Department of Telecommunication. It also said that setting up of telecom entrepreneurship promotion fund and telecom manufacturing promotion fund should also be considered for the same. So basically, because there is lot of imports that is happening, we should be making sure that all those lacuna areas are identified, and the funding should be concentrating on these lacuna areas, and in case there is problems, we should be overcoming these problems so that we have our own indigenous manufacturing, is what this article goes on to say. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next is with respect to the awareness. It says KM Joseph gets centers not for Supreme Court, page 1, and World Health Organization thumbs up for Swachh Bharat rural component on page 7. Both these articles have already been discussed, so kindly go through these articles for the informational purposes. So this is it for today. So kindly visit the BYJU'S CNA, look into the practice questions both pre and mains, write all your answers on the comment section. We will evaluate and give you the relevant feedback for the same. Thank you for listening. All the best.